All right, so hi, I'm Steve Snyder. I'm the president and CEO of the Fleet Science Center here in San Diego, and I know what we're going to do today. We're going to have some fun. So to start off with, Fleet Science Center has done a number of panels over the years, mostly talking about different superheroes or science fiction, board games, really looking at the science and engineering behind it. We're not going to do it this time. We're doing a very, very different kind of panel here to say, although we're still going to be talking a lot about science and engineering as we talk about Phineas and Ferb and the connection between the two. But to start with, I just need to know, how many of you all came across Phineas and Ferb as children? Okay, so how many of you, please be some of you, came at them through their kids? Oh, thank God. and how many of you came to this because of your innate brilliance and exquisite good taste? All right, fantastic. So as I mentioned, I came to it through my kids, came down one Saturday morning, there they were in front of the TV, and there they are watching the show where a group of kids are building a roller coaster across the whole town, right? And there were songs, and there was an evil pharmacist, and there were, and I was hooked. And that's not just to say that I'm a geek, because my wife was hooked as well. And collectively, we have watched all of them and are now anxiously awaiting the next drop by week to week watching it. So it's certainly been a nice family thing for us to not just do together. But one of the things that my wife is also a scientist really connected with in this is that it flashes you back to those days, right, when you were a kid playing in the backyard down by the creek out on that rock, when you're finding that giant piece of rotted plywood in the woods and you're using it to build something you should never, ever, ever have let your kids go on, right? These whole things of these sort of moments of imagination where the jungle gym became a spaceship, when you were building a roller coaster out of that cardboard box. And here are these kids taking the improbable, impossible, and maybe just impractical and making it real, right? Starting with this question of, wouldn't it be cool if? And that is at the heart of all science and engineering. Wouldn't it be cool if in the middle of a proton there were 6 different kinds of little things? Let's call them quarks, who knows? Wouldn't it be cool if we could take radio waves and use them to connect and communicate across vast distances? Wouldn't it be great if we could put someone on a giant bomb, shoot them up and land them on the moon and bring them back? And so this whole idea of this sort of notion of imagination and wonder that drives science and engineering is so well encapsulated in this show. And so we want to explore a little bit about it. So here's how it's going to go. What's going to happen is we're going to have a bit of conversation between our panelists here. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves. Then we're going to do a round of our 3 engineers have come up with their own suggestion for the world's best invention, built within the Phineas and Ferb firmament. And that needs not necessarily to be completely possible to do, but cool nonetheless. And then you all will vote on the best. Dan and Swappy will vote on the best. And the winner will receive the entirely imaginary, I know what we're going to do, Nader trophy. So I want to start with Dan and Swappy. So obviously the show has lots of examples of, or subtle examples of engineering. You've got collaboration, you've got prototyping, you've got failure, all sorts of things sort of built in. And even in your other show, Milo, there's this notion of sort of creative problem solving. Is that intentional, or is it just sort of a happy circumstance of sort of the storytelling, the story you wanted to tell?
I think we always want there to be difficulties that you have to overcome. In Phineas, the boys don't encounter too many of those. So when we did Milo, we made him encounter all of them. In Phineas, it's really Candace that gets all of the obstacles. We sort of went by this sort of Ferris Bueller kind of rule for Phineas and Ferb, that they aren't really changed that much by what goes on, and nothing really goes wrong for them. So it's sort of hard. A lot of people were confused about where the story is because there's not really any overcoming any obstacles for them. And I always say, well, what Phineas and Ferb are doing is not the story. What Candace is doing is the story. What Doofenshmirtz is doing is the story. Phineas and Ferb are just providing a setting for it.
They're kind of a vehicle.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking of these, and obviously a lot of these built on this idea of what are we going to do today? What's the contraption? What's the idea? What's the piece going to be? Sort of what's the process, creative process that you go through to kind of come up with these? Are you just walking down the street and wait until it hits you? Is there a
We sit
kind of
in a room with several other slightly deranged individuals and try to make each other laugh. And that's really the basis of it. And then you start putting the pieces together. You know kind of what the formula is. Phineas and Ferb come up with something. Candace is trying to bust them. Doofenshmirtz has an invention because he's got some petty grievance.
And a lot of the time
that has to take the other thing away, and one will kind of dictate the other. And then it's sort of problem solving. How do we put all the pieces together so it makes some semblance of sense?
And we often start from the ending. Okay, if like how are we going to take away what Phineas and Ferb have done? Because that's going to tell us what Doofenshmirtz is. It's going to if we want what Phineas and Ferb have built to get up and dance away, and that be the joke at the end, then Doofenshmirtz has to build a dancinator. And we sort of back engineer a lot of it from what is the outcome we want.
Awesome. So when you're thinking about the any of these kind of, whether you're talking about innate or you're talking about the sort of the creations there, I imagine there is a line between the sort of fantastic and the fantastical.
Oh yeah, there's a no magic rule that we have, that it can be something that is impossible to do with science as we know it, but there has to be some sort of cartoon science that they cite, or cartoon engineering that they cite. We can't just have, a broom fly. There has to be a reason. They've put, rotors down here, and so when they pitch us stuff that's too fantastical, we always pump the brakes and say, no, it has to feel like science. It has to feel like engineering. It can't feel like we're in Harry Potter.
Yeah, we have frustrated many writers. We both had the same line. It's like, no, you've just crossed over into magic. And they're like, yeah, but they can do this, that, and the other thing. But we do want some potentially reasonable explanation of how they can do that. It has to look feasible. And we have looked up a lot of science sometimes. It's us on the internet going, hey, this is an actual thing. Wow, cool.
Is there an idea that you had to kill? Just, boy, I wish there was. I wish we could have found some way to plausibly.
There was recently a story that we killed, and I don't know that we ever killed a story. Maybe one in the original 300
maybe
some episodes, and there was just recently one, but I don't remember what it was. Do you?
We did. We got to the end and we were just like, this is never going to not feel too magical. It's just not going to work. And I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like too much effort would be taken to try to make this story work when we could just go to this next story, but because it didn't work. It didn't stick in our brains. So we can't tell you what it is. We could maybe look it up because we know which one was killed. So we could probably find the original outline somewhere and say, this is why it didn't work, this is why it didn't work, this is why it didn't work.
Well, I like to engage your engineers, and because someone must have used an innator on me, I completely forgot to introduce them, even though it's right here in front of me. We'll claim that as opposed to the decrepitude I'm inching towards, as I mentioned earlier. So we have with us Gracie Emery, who's a computer scientist, Jose Castro. There you go. Fan club. Jose Castro, who's a water planning engineer with Black & Veatch. And Mike Tully, who's a mechanical and aerospace engineer at UCSD. So I'd like each of you to kind of take through the next step on that question and do two things. So first, how'd you come to Phineas and Ferb, and what does it mean or not mean as far as your career goes? And then two, and this idea of how do you balance between the fantastical and the reality? Because we're actually getting at the end of the day, you don't have a Dan or a Swampy who's going to tell you that idea is no good. It's just going to tell you it itself, I'm sure. So how do you balance this notion of sort of the blue sky imagining of what could be and sort of the realities of the world that imposes on you? So let's start here with Gracie.
Yeah. So I've been a Phineas and Ferb fan for a very, very long time. It came out when I was in middle school. And at that point, I was not thinking about computer science or engineering at all. Didn't even know those were possible career paths I could really choose. But I was a big band kid, and so the music of Phineas and Ferb was a big draw to me. And then, it shows you, though, even if you are a kid who's like not thinking about engineering, it does show you it's like, looks so fun. They're building such cool stuff. So it definitely did inspire me in ways. And then, with like blue sky ideas and how do you reconcile that in my job, a lot of that is, budget reasons, I guess, will sometimes dictate like what you can and can't do. But it is really a fun part of engineering that we do have like just a team of people coming together, pitching their ideas, like how do we solve these problems? That is like the core of what we all do. So it is a fun part of it.
Yeah, I also grew up with Phineas and Ferb, also in middle school. I'm not going to age you guys by letting you know how old I am now. And then I also grew up playing with a lot of Legos, so I think I had an outlet both to kind of absorb and see TV that kind of had this, for me, unimaginable like creations and things that you could do with science, and then being able to kind of use my hands to then build those kind of things. I would agree with Gracie. So I'm a water engineer. You could also call me a poop engineer. I deal with water and wastewater. And so everything I do is based on how much you guys want to pay your water districts for how to turn on the tap and all that and flush the toilets. So everything I do is based off your guys' tax dollars. So thank you so much in advance. And that's usually what we're limited by in terms of how creative we can be with our engineering.
So unfortunately for me, Phineas and Ferb wasn't around when I was watching Saturday morning cartoons, but I've become a more recent convert. I was definitely inspired by cartoons. Maybe a few of you know in here, like Inspector Gadget and Transformers and Voltron. And so, so maybe it's no surprise that I became a roboticist eventually, right? So at UC San Diego, I direct a robotics lab, and we invent new ways to solving problems using automation. And for me, touching on the blue sky question, that's the most fun part of engineering. We start either with a problem. Sometimes we start with ideas about, what's something we can do based on what we've seen recently, what's something new that we can develop, and try and connect that to how can that be useful in the real world. And but often I find it's the constraints that really make it practical for engineers. Okay, great. This is what we could do given 50 years. Now, what can we do tomorrow in a day? And really try and bring in the constraints to get the process going.
So this is a question ultimately for all of you, but I'd like to start with the engineers because it may seem like more of a challenge for them. So what role does imagination actually play in the work that you do on a day-to-day basis?
What role does imagination play? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like I was just saying, I think often when we start off with a project, I'll have a student join in my lab, especially the PhD students. I like to get them going on just starting blue sky, as we were saying, and thinking through what could we do, and then really trying to start without the constraints, just brainstorming, and then slowly bring it into, okay, how are we going to make this something that we can actually test out in person?
Yeah, I mean, I get an opportunity every day at work to kind of find a new way to do something. And so I think that is the easiest way for us to use our imagination is, in the same sense of what are we going to do today? It's more like how are we going to do this quicker and better and faster and with less money? And that sort of stress adds a little bit of imagination opportunities, I'll say.
Yeah, I was going to say the constraints usually inspire the most innovative ideas because you have to work within those constraints. But also working on a team, I think, is where the imagination really comes through. Your teammates come up with something, you build on that. Imagination is part of every single day.
Yeah. We do that a lot with our team. We have a team of writers that we come up with a story together, we beat it all out, and then we give it all out to a writer who goes and writes a script and comes back, and then we all punch it up together. And that is always where the show really becomes Phineas and Ferb, and you get all of these people's brains in on the same thing, and we pick people because they have different like ways that we're going to get this kind of a joke from this person. We're going to get this kind of a story problem solving out of this person. We're going to get this kind of a joke from this person. And we sort of have tried to build a team that sort of fills in the gaps in each other.
I imagine it's the same thing in engineering and science. We get some of our best ideas when we're sitting around just brainstorming stuff, and we say something really stupid, usually just to make each other laugh, and it takes one person in the room to go, wait a minute, we could make that work. And you suddenly realize somebody who said something just completely out of the blue, somebody's adopted that idea and figured out there might be something there. And that's usually where we get the magic.
So I see a lot of head nodding as everyone's talking here about sort of the similarities to this. And one of the things I always wondered, or one of the things that I've come across often, is this notion that, well, everyone knows what STEM is, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math. And then we have STEAM, science, technology, arts, and engineering, and math. See, the spelling is not my strong suit. So STEAM, and oftentimes I say, well, why, what's the difference between STEM and STEAM? And well, here's all arts, because that's where the creativity comes from. I'm happy to have a long discussion with anyone around that notion, to avoid that notion, right? This notion that creativity is somehow the area of the country, the owned by a particular sort of area of our endeavor. And so this question of creativity, this notion of where is it, how does it come, and how broadly it's applied, whether it's in science or it's engineering, or the flip side is, because if science and engineering aren't creative, that's because the arts have no rigor or discipline to them, right? Sure, right? There's nothing to that. There's no hard work in this. You sit in a room, right? You guys sit around in the room, you come with ideas, and that's it. And you go home, right? It's just that. The snap of the fingers. So I think there's something interesting about this idea of sort of the creative process, whether you are engineering a water system to remove poop and make it drinkable water, or whether it's engineering or creating essentially a show in that way. So there's something very interesting about that notion. And so I think one of the questions I have for all of you in this is that in that notion of being creative, of opening things up, is there this sort of loss of kind of how do you keep this spirit of curiosity, which kind of drives this, and wonder alive in the work that you do, when you're also being driven by how many shows you got to put out and when there are deadlines, right?
Yeah.
This has got to work, and how cheap does it have to be? And by the way, that's, I better not taste any of that poop when it comes through my water, right? All that kind of stuff. So how do you keep that sort of alive in the pressures of actually having to, meet deadlines and get this done? Because I'm assuming maybe for most of you that the former is the more exciting part of the work that you do rather than the latter.
I think what you were just saying about your team being in a room together and telling jokes and like something sticks, like I think that happens in engineering too. Like I think the meetings where we're just sitting around like talking about our weekends, like those conversations can turn into something, or just getting to know your coworkers on a better level lets you like have the space to include more wonder and creativity in your day-to-day. So I think those conversations are important.
Keeping all that creativity and spontaneity and all that stuff is easier, I think, for people like us, because we're basically really immature and childlike at our core. Yeah. But yeah, it is that team stuff. You're around with a bunch of people that have those same interests and have that same goal, and oftentimes I find it's the constraints that kind of give you the best ideas. People think just because we're doing these cartoons that we can do any idea, and we can't. We do put rules into our own world, and we do have budgetary concerns, and we have legal and other people who give us notes, and sometimes we get really angry when somebody will give us a legal note because we can't say something like Velcro. And you have to say hook and loop fastener, which doesn't really roll off the tongue. But it
also means nothing to anybody.
Nothing. So, but it's those constraints which force you to think a different way, and you often want to write a thank you note to the person who gave you that note because it made you do something better, more clever, more interesting. And I'm got to imagine it's the same thing with you guys. It's those constraints which leads you to a clever piece of thinking that people get excited about. It's like, ooh, we could do it that way. And then you're buzzing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you guys are all here at Comic-Con, which is awesome. We have our versions of Comic-Con, I guess, from an engineering world. They're conferences, but nonetheless, they happen in this exact convention center as well.
There's a lot of cosplay in them as well.
Yeah.
Little known fact.
There's usually a water droplet that walks around and gives out. And I think at those conferences, and I'm sure that some of you here that are inspired by creators and animators and voice actors get to see, like, man, they're doing such a great job. I want to be like Dan and Swampy, when I grow up, or as talented as they are. And you come here and you learn about how they've rose to the top and do such a great job year in and year out. And we get to do that same thing in engineering. And I think that kind of helps keep the creative bubble going and feel motivated to do the work that we do. And if you ever wanted a taste of the poop water now turned to potable water, they do tastings at the San Diego Treatment Plant Center. So there's plenty of opportunities. I see some shaking of your heads. It tastes fine, I promise. It's probably better than this smart water here.
I'm a risk taker. I'll give it a shot. Let's go.
My guess is most of the water that we've drank has at some point been poop water, don't you think?
Quick little story. The saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, what happens in Vegas gets dumped into the Colorado River, which then comes down to San Diego, to the tap water you've been drinking.
There's
Just to put that out there.
from every drink.
Yeah. It's clean, I promise. I promise that it's clean, it's safe to drink. Nothing to worry about there.
Yes.
I don't know how to follow that.
All right.
No, I agree with the sentiment. I mean, engineering is a team sport. We're people, and the nerds who do engineering are a lot like the nerds who come to Comic-Con. It's just you get really passionate about a topic, and you know how to dive in and really get excited, figure out what's going on. And so for anyone thinking about career paths, I think who has that kind of attitude, engineering can be a really good choice.
All right, so I got one final question, then we'll get into some pitches. So our engineers can get themselves warmed up. But that question is for all of you then is, so we see failure in the show. We see failure all the time. Failure is certainly a huge part of the engineering process, no less the science process, no less probably any other process in there. So how do we help kids and adults stop worrying about failure?
I think we all have to fail louder so that we can show people, younger kids especially, like that it's okay and it does happen. And even like within, wherever you do work, like you failing loudly shows the people next to you and on your team that it's okay. And like asking questions in the same way, I think, like asking more questions. Jose was talking earlier about stupid questions and how there is no such thing. Asking questions, like just creating safer spaces to fail is a huge part of that.
Yeah, being afraid to look foolish is the biggest killer of progress and creativity. Go out there and look like a fool. Do it often, do it whenever you can, do it big and bold and loud, because it's in those moments that you will have the courage to move forward. I spent my entire life looking pretty darn foolish. Dan will vouch.
He looks foolish right now.
Right now. Go for it.
Bob Iger, the president of the CEO of Disney, once was giving a talk that we were at, and he talked about how important it is to give the people that are working for you the chance to fail and the ability to fail without thinking that means their job immediately. And the reason he says that is because he was the producer of a show in the 90s maybe called Cop Rock. Who saw?
It was a
that
musical
was Bob
cop
Iger
show.
produced that show. That was the show he was, he was the guy championing that show. And he said, it was a big swing. It was something that nobody knew whether it would work or not. and it really didn't work. But he was given that freedom to like put some effort into seeing whether this could work. And he says it's important to make those kind of failures, because it's only from being free to try to make those kind of failures that you get a real success of something that's very different than one would before. Like a lot of people didn't think Phineas and Ferb would work because it was very different than the shows that were
13
being made at
years
the
of
time.
people telling us it was not going to work.
You need to be able to be free to hit something that might be a colossal failure.
Yeah, you're all clearly hearing about instances of failure. So know that you're not by yourself in failing. You know, everyone fails every single day. Well, maybe not everybody every single day, but you know, you get pretty close. So just know that you're not doing it by yourself. You're not failing by yourself. You're not succeeding by yourself. And just bring that sentiment with you.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and I was talking about how if we work on something and we put everything together and it comes together exactly as we expected, of course I'm excited, right? There's nothing better than something coming out and working. But I haven't learned, right? You only learn when you finally get everything together and you realize that it doesn't work the way you expected, right? And that's failure. But that's great. It's a lesson. It's a lesson, you know, the world is giving you, and you kind of have a choice at that point to choose to build off of it or not. And in terms of how to encourage that more, I would say that's really what we try and do in our classes. We don't always do this successfully. You know, the secret about being a professor is we don't really know everything when we start teaching, and we try different things out. But hopefully we give students a chance to have those failures and learn from them in a scenario where it's not going to ruin their grades for the rest of their life or something like that. So.
All right, great. So now that we've got everyone warmed up for failure, it's time for some pitches. All right. So the basic rules we've given them is, yeah, that's about it, right? We're looking for what do you think could be? What do you think would be a really cool thing within the context of the show? And they get bonus points if it's something that they could figure out, this is how it might actually be able to happen. So who wants to go first? Come on. Oh, I see. Jose's moved the most. So there you go. It's you.
That was
Go
like
for
at
it.
an auction site where you scratch your nose and suddenly you bought a Picasso.
Yeah, I had a hard time thinking of one. I actually, talking about collaboration, I kept going back and forth between two, and there's some people in the audience there, my fiance included, that constantly had to hear what I was thinking about and what idea would make the most sense. And I think we settled, and I don't have any science to prove this one in any way, but if you watch the movie Spy Kids, there was a microwave that instantly made food using a tablet. And I thought, I'm a really big, like I have a photo album of cheesecakes that I've tried around the world. And I thought it'd be really cool is instead of like Uber Eats or DoorDash, if I could just, in my microwave, click a couple buttons and I get a cheesecake from like Belgium, Germany, Paris, wherever I want at any time of day. So that's what I thought of, was a microwave that could, the way I phrased it was the fastest food delivery-inator.
All right.
I want to know
but-
where is the best cheesecake?
The one that I've had the best so far was in Bogota, Colombia. It was really good. It was a passion fruit cheesecake. Very delicious.
I have had that cheesecake. In Bogota. Yeah, it's amazing.
So I got one question for you, Jose, then.
Yeah.
How will you use it to take over the tri-state area?
We have,
Yeah, there's got to be an end game.
the end game is you teleport enough cheesecakes, there'll be pelicans that will pick up Perry and send him to a different part of the world so Doof has enough time to do his other innate ordering.
It's a little convoluted.
I foresee a lot of work training pelicans as agents.
All right.
Who's next?
Go ahead.
Okay. So is anyone here a fellow fiber artist, crochet, knitters? Okay, good. Okay. So one problem, if you are a fiber artist, is that you can never have enough yarn. So yeah, yeah. So I am going to create the yarn combobulator, which turns anything into yarn. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Good audience participation. So a big plus of this is sustainability. You know, we have like way too much textile waste happening. So we can turn old clothes into new yarn. There are people working on this, but as far as I can gather, it's pretty slow still and not a very good scale. And we have like 92 million tons of textile waste every year, so we gotta cut way back on that. So this would help with that. But also we could use other materials. You know, there's an engineering firm called Keel Labs, and I'm a big fan of them. They are turning kelp into yarn. So there are people working on this, and I think that we need to scale it up and maybe have yarn made out of all different types of things too.
All right, awesome.
My wife's a knitter, and that idea both makes me feel good because I won't spend so much on yarn, but also terrifies me that there will be that much more yarn in my life.
It's a valid fear. Yeah.
Became friends with Kelly Dempsey, who's a clothes designer who was on Project Runway, who's doing tons of work reclaiming clothes and working against fast fashion. So
Excellent.
I like that. But how's he going to use it to take over the tri-state area?
I know, yeah. Well, similar to your concern, it could just be too much yarn. You know, just builds and builds, and that's.
Or it's a positive one, right? We just make it Afghan that can wrap the entire
There you
tri-state
go.
area and
Yeah.
keep us warm in the summer, the winter. See, the winter, summer, I get confused in San Diego. I don't really know what those words mean anymore. All right, bring us on home, Mike.
Okay, so I'm a robotics engineer, roboticist, and I know you're all thinking I'm going to propose a robot as the best invention ever. I'm not. I'm going to propose a robotinator. A robotinator is a machine that makes robots. It's like wishing for more wishes, okay? So you get this machine.
So you're saying it's cheating?
You have this machine that can make any robot you want, and as many of them as you want. You can get an army of little robots that can go out and do your bidding all around the world, and they're biodegradable, so once they're done, you don't have to worry about them ruining the environment.
And you have a prototype?
Now, it just so turns out that I've brought a little demo here. I don't know if it's going to work. Would you guys want to see a demo? So, I am the evil professor in my lab, which means usually my job is breaking the demos.
This would be the first scene in a science fiction horror film. Just so you know.
This is our a hexapod robot, six-legged robot, modeled after an insect, and it's powered purely by air. There's no electronics. The air, or in this case, CO2 from a little bike inflator here, is going to come out. It's going to run the brain of the robot and then also power its muscles. Let's see if this works. Okay, that's perfectly normal part of the process. Now, if I can. Okay, so this is low pressure. If we turn up the pressure a little bit, it's going to reach a point where it won't work anymore. Okay. Oh. Let's see what I got to here. I may have overwhelmed him.
He has stage fright.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
you can be
So
overwhelmed.
I'll try this again in a minute. But basically what's going on is we have this pressure CO2 gas that runs a little oscillator that you maybe heard there for a minute that runs the legs. I think this is when I should have brought my postdoc to help me debug. This is just an example of failure. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And I think we've all learned something.
But you guys couldn't see it from where you are, but it was moving like an animal for like a second and a half.
And now I'm going to have nightmares.
We'll give it a second, and then maybe afterwards, if you want to come up, we'll see if we can do it again.
While we're not looking at it, if it starts running off the table and you don't see it anymore, yeah. She'll be, all right, great. So there's our 3 pitches. So we've got yarn forever, instant cheesecakes, and robots making robots. That never goes wrong in any story ever. So, by rounds of applause, number 1. All right, number 2, cheesecakes. And number 3, remember, it's coming for you. Number 3. All right, we'll leave it to the experts to pick the.
Well, you know, for me at least, that much yarn would cause a lot of static electricity. And I think that robots making robots is sort of Ice 9 from that Kurt Vonnegut story, and it sounds like the beginning of a science fiction horror movie. But I would love to have cheesecake from all over the world. So just by virtue of what the end product would be, my vote would be for
I think as the head of ALCA, the robot idea terrifies me the most. Because I think if Doofenshmirtz got a hold of that, it would be truly terrifying. And I think instead he would put all of his time into the cheesecake idea and would find an incredibly convoluted way to use that to take over the tri-state area.
If everybody's full, they're happy, they're not going to notice I'm taking over the tri-state.
Everybody wants to follow the guy with cheesecake, who can give them cheesecake. But I think the
I'll
most,
be the Pied Piper of cheesecake.
the most functional and useful idea is the yarn. If we could convert clothing, I actually want to see that happen. But I think
right.
for the purposes.
So we've got a time between cheesecake and yarn. You will both get your. Oh, I've just been told it's self-destructed. The prize has been self-destructed. I'm sorry. We'll have to move on from that. So now we'd like to open it up for any questions y'all have. Oh, right there.
Okay, I have thought about this. I thought about
Wait,
this.
you have thought about
I was going to prevent Doofenshmirtz from using it for evil in this way. So yeah, we need some detection software in there to be able to, you know, not turn on when you're pointing it at a living being. That's what I came up with. Yeah. But it's a good concern. We need you on the team to, yeah.
Would Phineas and Ferb ever go on a summer vacation to real scientific places like CERN, say in Geneva with the Large Hadron Collider, and maybe come up with things like time travel? You know, mess around with anti-gravity.
Well, they have done time travel a couple of times actually in the show, but we just coincidentally we have an episode coming out soon where we find out that there's a Large Hadron Collider right next door to them.
Their neighbor has one.
In the direction the camera is never facing. And somebody throws something and it hits
But he
it.
never
and we're
noticed
like,
it.
How come we never noticed that before? And it comes back periodically through the second half of the season.
I look forward to the day when Phineas and Ferb can have access to things just like that. Because I think they'll do good things.
No, I don't think so. I think you can, if you really want the carbonara from Rome, take it. You know what I mean? Take what you want.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
So you guys talked about a time where you may have failed, but that led to a greater success in the future.
So asking for times when you had a failure that led to greater success.
There was a time where I was up for a supervising director job on a series at the same time as I was working on some feature shorts, and I felt like a supervising director job was the next, step that would get me to where I was. But I was having so much fun on the shorts, and I just sort of let, my producer know that I was going to leave and go to this other job, and then it became a whole kerfuffle between the two producers, and I felt like I had burned a bridge in one place, and then I didn't get this job, and I felt really bad for a bit. And I stayed at the shorts and ended up being the supervising director of that shorts. Like within about 2 or 3 months, I got promoted to that position on that. And so I was doing the job I preferred and got the promotion as well. So sometimes there's these little divots that happen, and you're like, oh, it was one of those times where I thought like I had made the wrong decision somehow, and it turned out to be the right decision in the long run.
I was 28 years old and ended up being the vice president of sales and marketing for a computer accessories company, and realized that I was terrified that I would wake up at 64 and be the vice president of sales and marketing for a computer accessories company. So I quit. I had no job, no idea what I was going to do, and had a friend say to me, I've seen your drawings, you should get into animation. I'm like, great, because the mortgage is due, and I really need the work. And my first job was on The Simpsons doing backgrounds in the second season, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and my life completely changed at 28, because I couldn't hack it in the computer marketing biz.
I'll give a quick example from the engineering side. I went to San Diego State, so not too far from here. And I actually, my freshman year, failed Calc 2. There's like 500 people in those classrooms. I retook it over the summer at a small community college nearby, and realized that everything I learned was easier with a smaller group, and I can do more workshops. And I think that freshman year was a great way to that failure kind of led me to like understand how I learned better and how I was going to be more successful in school.
I failed Calc 2 too. I got you, man.
It's tough. Don't let that
I got you,
discourage you
brother.
from pursuing engineering.
Just look what could happen. Yeah, in the blue.
So I actually have two questions, and one of them is about the robot that makes
The Robotinator.
So for each robot have, like, could you like specifically program each robot to do a different thing, or would you just set it voice commands, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. And these are all the kinds of things we usually think about in robotics, right? How is the system going to work? How are we going to interact with it? Is it going to have some ability to make decisions on its own? Things like that. In this case, what we're trying to do, and I'm sorry I couldn't show you it in action, but we're trying to 3D print, as I said, the whole body of the robot, which means that this robot is going to be simple compared to, something kind of electronic systems that you've seen off the shelf. But that simplicity can be an advantage sometimes. So I think the answer to your question is yes, and there's all sorts of different people working on different directions in robotics.
Get your nickname.
My last name is Marsh. I was living in England in 1980, and all the people I worked with at the Timepiece Wine Bar and Discotheque decided they were going to call me either Boggy Marsh or Swampy Marsh. And I
Because
think...
those are descriptions for marshes.
Yes, and I was kind of swampy and boggy at the time, but I realized I did not want people to call me Boggy. And I made a big deal of it one night, and the next day when I came into work, they all said, "Hello, Swampy." I've been swampy ever since.
Orange tie.
My question is for the engineers, for all three of you. Where are your self-destruct buttons, and how do they destroy your engineering?
So where are your self-destruct buttons?
That's right, you need
And
one
how
of
do they
those.
destroy?
We have on any hard robots, so this is soft robots. A lot of what we do is soft robots to try and make them safe to work around. The rigid robots that we work with all have a giant red button somewhere just in case something goes wrong, and we need those. So yeah, very close is the answer.
I think I would put mine on the top of the microwave. Kind of when you get frustrated with electronics, you kind of like bang on the top. So I assume it's in the same place here.
Yeah, I would have a big red button and also a remote, so that if you can't get too close to it. You need to have a remote option as well. So I think many fail safes is good.
Let's go all the way over there.
I'm totally with the cheesecake thing. At the 1964 New York World's Fair, they had an exhibit of a microwave dishwasher combo that you put a dish into your dirty dishes, and out came the new set of dishes. And I tell you, ever since I was a little kid, I grew up thinking, God, when I'm an adult someday, I'm going to have that. Will it ever happen?
Are you sure that wasn't just a dishwasher?
And you can choose your style.
What happens
When
to
I was
old
growing up, we were promised jetpacks. Walter Cronkite assured me that we'd have jetpacks. We don't have jetpacks, and I'm still a little angry at Walter Cronkite.
But we'll have cheesecakes and endless yarn, so it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. Yeah.
I was curious about all the panelists' favorite inventions were from the show.
Favorite invention from the show?
Mine is the animal translator. I definitely want to know what my dog is thinking.
I would just give everything if we could get somebody to create a functional chicken replacinator. That would be a dream come true for me.
You know, when I made that, I didn't think it would be as useful. We've used it like 4 times. We got back from being stranded on another planet.
It's a device that changes place, that you shoot it and it changes place with the nearest chicken. Although it does have a setting for the farthest chicken. It seemed like the stupidest thing we'd ever created, and it has been the most useful thing we've ever come up with.
We've literally used it like in the movie and in 4 episodes of Phineas and an episode of Milo Murphy's Law as well. It's,
So to all you future engineers and inventors, give us a chicken replacinator.
I thought, ironically, that the evaporator was really funny because he gets rid of water. And I was like, oh, look, more work for me.
I really like the time machine. I know that they didn't invent it, they fixed it up, but it was, traveling through time is always, would be amazing.
yeah.
Red Bull hot tub. Next. Yeah.
So you guys all talked about limits and budgets and what kind of thing. Phineas and Ferb obviously don't have those limits, but you also said that they can't use magic. So where do they get the money?
I've been asked this a bunch of times on TikTok.
What's with the baby head?
You answer the one, I'll answer the other.
Two answers. The first one, we always say that there's a line in the very first episode where they're falling through the atmosphere on this roller coaster car, and all the kids are screaming. And it's a line that Swampy came up with when we were first coming up with the concept of the series. And I said, that's who Phineas is, because Phineas and Ferb are just standing there, and all the kids are screaming, and the front of the car is burning up. And Phineas just turns to Ferb and says, "We should have charged more." Ferb turns to Phineas and says, "We should have charged more." And so we always say they charged money for the roller coaster. They made a little bit of a profit, and they've invested it very well over the years.
Very wise. And the giant floating baby head came from one of our first, it was a Halloween special. And one of our animators, Mike Diedrich, we said, look, we just want to have one of those hallway gags where things float through, scary stuff.
Things.
And he came back and was showing us the sequence, and one of the things that floated through was a giant floating baby head. And we're like, Mike.
What's wrong with Mike?
What is wrong with That's what scares you? And he went, yeah. And it made us laugh so much that other animators started putting it in. We didn't design it or plan it.
The whole run that Candace does about a giant floating baby head. What's that even about? That was because Mike put a giant floating baby head in the storyboard. Yeah. and-
It's just a thing. It's like the zebra that calls Candace Kevin. We don't know, but it makes us laugh, and we try not to question stuff that makes us laugh.
Truly my favorite donator, the inexplicable floating baby head attractinator. Yes, with Perry on the lap. Okay.
As a mom of 16 kids who watched every episode of the show, were there ever any Phineas inventions or innators that you thought, maybe we should put in there? Maybe kids might try to.
I think that there were things that might have been pitched one way, and we said, well, we can't do that, but we can do something along this line. You know, there have been times where we have guided it away from things that we felt like we don't want anything to be repeatable by kids that might be in any way dangerous, or, you know, so we always sort of put the brakes on that and put it in a direction that
We've been pitched a lot of things with flames, and we try not to. Flame's bad. Although I have no problem with velocity. Speed's fine. No flames.
All right, I'm getting the indication we need to wrap up with a final question. We got someone who's
Girl
been.
right there in the pink with
Okay.
great ears.
There you go. Yep.
Purple.
Can somebody repeat it? Because
Red Bull hot tub.
when are we going to do? Buford will get a Red Bull hot tub.
That's an exclusive. You heard it here first. We have not confirmed that anywhere.
The season is young. We've only dropped the first 10 episodes. There's 10 more episodes coming, and in each of those 10 episodes is a half an hour. So there's really 20 more stories coming.
And I think you guys, I assume everybody wants Buford to get his Red Bull hot tub, yes? So do we.
And all will be right with the world. All right, thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Dan, Swampy, Gracie, Jose, and Mike. Thank you for coming out. Thank all of you. Let's go make today the best day ever. Enjoy the rest of Comic-Con.